The magic does not lie in itching to tell the story. It lies in attention to detail, playing it straight without taking sides. Welcome to the program Straight Strokes. It's a program in which we interview and speak to celebrities, controversial personalities, civil servants, newsmakers, and all kinds of people who are important for Kashmir's political landscape and who have something to say, something important to say. And today we are delighted to have with us a very celebrated civil servant, an outspoken commentator, and also possibly an aspiring politician, Mr. Shah Faesal. Welcome to the show, Mr. Shah Faesal.
Thank you so much. I was wondering, do I fit into the controversial personality or the celebrity or the civil servant or maybe all of them, yeah?
That people and viewers will decide.
Let them decide.
So my first question to you is a direct question. The article you co-authored with Mr. Mehboob Makhdoumi, in which you talked about several things, and one of the fundamental arguments of that article was that people who are in electoral politics do not necessarily represent the people's sentiment in Jammu and Kashmir, and vice versa. And prior to that, you had also written an article, I remember the last paragraph was possibly where you articulated a dignified exit for the people of Jammu and Kashmir from this conflict for last 3 decades. So kindly...
So I knew that this was coming actually. So yeah.
This is a very soft question to begin with.
This is a very recent thing which has happened. So I would want to kind of share about how the genesis, how the article happened basically. So you have Mehboob Makhdoumi, he's also a fellow Harvardian. So basically it was a normal conversation between two people who were not necessarily politicians, two ordinary Kashmiris, talking about the way forward in Kashmir. And Mehboob is somebody who has completely opposite views on electoral politics than me. Mehboob believes that electoral politics is not a solution. Electoral politics is more of an obstacle, and electoral politics is not something which can at all be an option for Kashmiris and has not been an option for Kashmiris. Compared to that, I'm somebody who believes that electoral politics is an option. And political space is a very important space for us to occupy. And we cannot let that space to be unattended. And at the same time, we need very well-reasoned, very well-intentioned people to fill in that space. So that was the fundamental contradiction which we had vis-a-vis our approach to the electoral politics. Now, what was the convergence? Where was the meeting ground? The meeting ground was that Mehboob believes that if there is an electoral politics, which is on the pattern of MUF, where the issue of larger aspirations and the governance, which is obviously we will be extending the argument to RSD. If something like that happens, that this convergence happens, then that electoral politics is something possibly from which solutions can come out. So my point there was, let me just finish. My point there was that I agree with this. I agree with you on that point. That yes, if we have a politics here, which is an alternative vision of politics, whereby the people who have been elected, they also represent the aspirations. I think that will be a very good thing for the Kashmir to begin with.
But given the power dynamics in this region, and especially how India and Pakistan have also treated Kashmir and the Kashmir problem and their approach to Kashmir problem, in 1987 everybody knows what happened. The elections were rigged, and how hopeful are you that kind of politics will be allowed by both New Delhi and Islamabad?
So basically I was telling you it was more like a theoretical construct. We were trying to, I do not claim to be an intellectual, but then as somebody who is a student and who has some sort of a connection with the youngsters at least, we believe that we need to challenge people with new ideas. So there was nothing wrong in challenging people with the idea that something which has happened in 1987, that model is something which can possibly help us in reimagining the entire electoral politics idea. I do not mean that as politicians will it be tomorrow practicable to do it, but it is something which we can theorize about, something which we can at least imagine.
Shah Faesal, when you cracked the civil service examinations, you topped the exam and it created a sensation.
Yes.
You became famous. You also became controversial.
Exactly.
You went to Harvard. you became famous and controversies kind of followed you.
Yeah.
Do controversies chase you, or you choose controversies?
Basically, I think whenever you talk something which is a little bit deviating from the kind of line which we are expected to take, so then you say, oh, this guy is controversial. I have been possibly speaking on issues which I am not authorized to speak. I agree that at times the kind of imagination which we have of a civil servant,
The social media takes rules.
the kind of stereotype which we have created of a civil servant is somebody who's very quiet, is very detached, is somebody who's very indifferent to larger happenings in the society. He's not supposed to talk about issues. I have somewhere I have definitely breached that kind of threshold, and I think yes, it's not that controversies I have been choosing for myself. It's because the way people have been looking at me. I think that entire framework is controversial.
But you also said, I read somewhere you had talked about when you went to when you were in Harvard, there was some change of thinking and change of heart as far as your earlier views in Kashmir were concerned. If that happened, how it happened, and what were they?
I think one important thing is that I was an officer of the state, officer of the government. So when you are sitting on a chair, the way you look at things is possibly a very statistical things. It's from the eyes of the state, eyes of the government. So if you have to look at the stone pelter, you have to look at the militant, you have to look at the political mobilizer, you look at it from a security angle. So once I went to the Harvard University and I got an opportunity to detach myself from whatever was happening on the ground, and I could take possibly a more academic, a more research-oriented, a more neutral, more impartial view of things. And I think that made me real, and also because I got an opportunity to read about movements, resistance movements, public movements, around the globe, politics of the world. So I think that somehow made me understand that the kind of viewpoint which I was having about issues, that viewpoint was not final. There was definitely a lot that could be corrected there.
Mr. Faesal, you also composed a tweet. You tweeted on what was happening in mainland India, especially with regards to mob lynching.
Yeah.
And that particular tweet, wherein you used the word perhaps lynchistan or something else, rapistan, and that became very controversial. And there was some explanation sought from you. Explain the journey, the trajectory, and what kind of changes as a civil servant who is used to have an opinion, who is very opinionated, unlike other civil servants who do not talk about issues. What kind of a challenge was for you?
I think every civil servant has to choose his battles. I think I have also picked my battles carefully. When it comes to talking about the lynchings and lynch mob culture in the mainland India, it has been something which has actually very much disturbed me in the last couple of years. Because you cannot imagine 200 million people. 200 million people can be imagined. 200 million people, they feel getting marginalized, and a certain kind of a systematic violence being perpetrated against them. As a civil servant who I may not necessarily relate myself with them, but it's how the system relates me with others. So I may not necessarily look at myself as a Muslim officer, but I have seen that the system sees me as a Muslim officer. So it's important for me actually to relate to the sufferings and the pain of the larger community. And I think when lynchings happened, this did create a lot of stress, a lot of disappointment in me about the way things were happening, about the way things were being responded to. And I think that tweet was a result of the frustration which was inside me as an officer. Because as a member of the government, it was not possible for me possibly to do something more about it. But I think I could have at least spoken about it, and I was on record that I have at least said something about it.
And there was kind of a small resistance shown by you.
Yeah, these are those small resistances. I think we missed one important point, which was when you talked about the dignified exit.
Yes.
I think that article is something which has become too big for discussion. Wherever I go, people ask me, come on, you've written that one article 2 years back. One interesting thing happened is that when I wrote that article, there was a media house in Kashmir. There was some problem with the media house, which was at a personal level. They wrote an article on the article. So if you look at the line which is being very often quoted, which I said that Kashmir is safe, blah blah blah, that line is not there in my article. I have not said it. Yeah. So my article was basically in the nature of an inquiry. So let's ask questions about what we are doing. Are we good with A? Are we good with B? If we want to achieve this, then why are we thinking about A, B, C, and D? So that was in the nature of an introspection. that I was not making any allusions to anything at all. And if you read the article really, you'll see that people just focused on the last para. And you also asked me the question about the last para.
Because that's what people ask. In Kashmir we have lots of, unfortunately or fortunately, people talk about things in very black and white manner.
Exactly.
And there are, very few people who actually understand the nuances or talk or at least ready to, appreciate the shades of grey.
Exactly.
But my question again is what I read from your Facebook post a day before, and that was that some people actually maybe trolled you, or you described them as a set of people who are custodians of a sentiment, and whatever they said on the Facebook or Twitter on social media spaces, that actually made again a change of heart in you. So, but the question from common people is Shah Faesal that fragile that somebody will write a Facebook commentary and he will change his plans? You have been a doctor, you are a civil servant until right now, and perhaps you'll be an aspiring politician. How do you explain this, that you could be so fragile?
It's not basically about being fickle or basically changing opinions off and on. It's about challenging a certain opinion, creating a new idea, and expecting a certain reaction to that idea. For the last 10 years, I think I'm very much used to a lot of trolling. I've become very habitual of taking abuse on social media, and actually I may be one of the very few people. I tell them that if there is free speech anywhere on social media, it's on my wall, because you can come and abuse me, critique me, say anything to me. I don't really mind. I don't block people. I have not blocked anybody. You can see the kind of abuse which I get. So when we wrote this,
but you also get a lot of support.
A lot of support as well. That's why it doesn't matter to me. So when basically this article was discussed, and two scholars from AMU wrote a very good piece, very good response to that article, which is actually the idea which we had.
To have a conversation.
To have a conversation, to have an engagement with others. But then, because this idea was propounding something which was actually going to be very path-breaking, it was a climb down from me. It was not a climb down from Mahbub Makhdoumi, because he still believes in that electoral politics is not the solution. It was for me that possibly I need to reimagine my politics if I want to come into politics someday. But when we saw the kind of responses which we had, it made me realize that maybe the time is not right yet for this idea to flourish. So if there are alternative ideas with me, I can go and do that. It's not a change of heart.
When it comes to Kashmir, people either become prisoners of history. People quote from centuries, 400 years, or 1931 or 47 onwards. But a lot of people also talk about the path ahead for Kashmir as a collective. But what is the path ahead for Shah Faesal as an individual also?
I told you that, which I wrote in my social media post also, that I have been a man from the system. And once you associate yourself with the system, people will always associate you with the system. It becomes very hard for us to then kind of
dissociate
and to go for some other thing. What happened in my case is that I see myself as a part of the system. People say that there are no solutions possible within the system, but I still believe that suppose tomorrow if I get an opportunity to represent Kashmiri somewhere, it brings in a certain amount of legitimacy to what you're saying. I wish one day when I spoke at Harvard recently, I told them not to share that speech with people, but one day when it actually will be shared, I'm sure people will be shocked in a very positive sense. And tomorrow, as a representative, when I go there again and I speak, suppose you go there and somebody speaks in Parliament, I think it makes a lot of sense when you have a representative nature and you talk from a position of legitimacy, that you're saying something.
That your power comes from the people.
Yeah, it comes from the people. Then what matters is that you need to be truthful. So my problem till now has been that we believe that the way politics has been conducted in our state, that politics has not been based on truth. We have not been representing people correctly. We have been saying that it's an issue of jobs, it's an issue of development, it's an issue of roads. But actually it's not that. It's a political issue. It's a historical. There's a history to it. There's a memory to it. There's a culture to it. So we cannot.
Memory is a weapon.
Yeah, it's a weapon, and we cannot possibly undermine those things and represent people in a very incorrect way, and then still expect that people will be accepting you.
But how do you challenge the critiques, or how do you counter critiques who would say that all the mainstream politicians, especially the two regional parties, or the third one now, which has emerged, PC, they're all representatives of Delhi in Kashmir. They represent Delhi in Kashmir and not the other way around. They do not represent Kashmir in Delhi. So how would you?
I think if I ever have an opportunity of going into that field, honestly speaking, it will be like, let's be honest with the people. And what are the risks? What are the losses that you expect? The losses are that you might actually be losing your chair. Somebody who's willing to, so be it, it's okay for me. So I think this politics is presently fit for a very massive disruption. There has been a disruption in technology, disruption in media, disruption in social media. I think our politics needs a disruption. And very honestly, myself, I believe that I really want to do it because I am somebody who I think can take those risks and try my best at least to represent people correctly if I get an opportunity.
So Shah Faesal is a risk-proof individual.
Not risk-proof exactly. We all have our families, we all have our concerns, our insecurities. But somewhere I feel that because this is for the people, because this is legitimacy and you're doing a very honest act, I think that risk is worth taking.
How do you see when, for example, a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old boy from Kashmir, South Kashmir or North Kashmir or central part of Kashmir is willing to sacrifice his life for a sentiment? And I have heard even mainstream politicians say this, that the only sincerity which is kind of prevalent in Kashmir comes from that individual who is willing to sacrifice his life for something he believes in. And how would you address those concerns that we are losing boys as young as 15, 20, 25 in their prime of youth, in impressionable age? How do you address that?
So imagine the level of commitment, as you're very correctly saying. This is the level of commitment that this youngster has towards a certain cause. Now, this commitment cannot be purchased. This is not something which you can introduce in a person by giving him money. Absolutely unimaginable. And at the same time, you can also understand the level of frustration, the level of desperation which these youngsters have towards a certain goal, towards a certain cause. Now, what we can possibly do is that somebody like me, I cannot sit back in my home, in my room, in my office, and not be moved by this, and not see the sense of urgency which this kind of thing happens, and which makes him incumbent on us. Number one. Number second is that we also need to represent this youngster correctly. That let's try to do something about the environment in which this thing is happening, in which this youngster is being forced to do something like that. And I think that can come only if we bring a little bit of honesty to the political discourse in the state. If this youngster feels that he's being represented correctly, his aspirations are being represented correctly, his aspirations are safe, in safe hands, I think in that case, these desperations will not be there. I think we'll be saving a lot of lives if we bring a little bit of honesty in which we represent people.
One last question. When it comes to representative character, the counter argument could be like the side of Shah Geelani, for example, who fought elections and won it 3 times, had a hat trick of wins in electoral process, and he is now in resistance politics. He is in revolutionary politics. So how could your experiment be different? One, and second, I have written in one of my articles that to resolve a conflict like Kashmir, you need perhaps a statement, statesman in Delhi, a statesman in Islamabad,
Absolutely.
and also a statesman in Srinagar. Because right now we have seen, unfortunately, that there are stuntsmen, there are a lot of stunt going on. So can people hope that can people actually place their trust in Shah Faesal?
Firstly, when I look at myself, I see myself as an addition. I do not see myself as an alternative. So there are people who are already doing great things in life. They have their own vision of a solution in Kashmir. Somebody is associated with the separatist politics. Somebody has chosen armed resistance. Somebody is doing human rights. I'm absolutely okay with whatever somebody is doing. I have chosen my own path. And my path is that there's an electoral space. This space has been there. When we talked about paradox, the paradox was that you have a million march today, and tomorrow you have 70% polling. So
2008,
So how do we utilize this space for representing the last aspiration? So my focus is only trying to fill in that vacuum which is there presently. That somewhere I feel that we are not utilizing that space properly, and that has absolutely no prejudice to whatever others are doing. My due respect to whatever others are doing.
So is it like the Faraz verse? इस शहर में नगमे बहने दो, बस्ती में
हमें भी रहने दो. Absolutely.
Thank you, Shah Faesal, for speaking to us.
Thank you
It's
so
been
much
a wonderful
for
chat,
listening.
and I hope that your hands could be the safe hands, like we say in cricket. We have the best of fielders in slips who have the safe hands. So let's hope that
Inshallah.
these are the safe hands.
Thank you so
Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this interview.